Welcome back to American Arms Channel, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Drake, and today we're here in southwestern Virginia, sitting in front of the beautiful mountains on a slightly rainy day, but it's still gorgeous nonetheless. Today we're going to be discussing why the Browning A5 and A5 Magnum can still be an excellent choice for modern waterfowlers and for those looking to hunt with a classic piece. Now, contrary to popular belief, not all older shotguns have to use a high-end soft alloy shot that's fairly expensive to be used for duck hunting safely. A lot of older guns in excellent mechanical but well-used condition can be had for fair prices, and you won't be too concerned about maybe using it a little bit harder than somebody would a beautiful, perfect, pristine piece. And that's where being able to use things like steel shot and lower-end bismuth come into play. Now, bismuth, of course, is going to be an excellent option to protect your older gun's barrels, but if you've got the right selection, like a Browning A5 Magnum for instance, steel shot, even with a full choke, can be a reasonable choice to bring these old girls back into the blind. Today, in particular, we're looking at this Browning A5 Magnum with a 32-inch barrel, a full choke, manufactured in 1964. This is my father's gun, and it is exactly as old as he is. So you can do the math there. This gun is in awesome shape for just a general hunting piece. There is dings and dents, all with age and I'm sure honest wear and tear from hunting. There's a few spots here and there, but generally the rib is flat. There's no major dings or dents or divots. The bore is clean. The choke is excellent. It patterns wonderfully. The bead is not squashed. Mechanically, it is absolutely pristine. And the only issue we had out of it after purchase was that the extractor broke on a couple of heavier hunting loads, lead hunting loads nonetheless. Well, that was a pretty simple fix. And I used the opportunity to also tear the gun down. That being said, this is a Belgian gun and it is of excellent quality. The barrel thickness is exceptional. The bore is bright and shiny. On and on I can go about how wonderful this gun is, and the internal components are in great shape as well. But what does that mean for somebody looking to get one of these? Maybe you're looking to bring yours back into the blind and you don't know where you should start as far as an ammo search, or if it's reasonable to bring these old girls out of retirement for a few more ducks or geese. I think it's absolutely reasonable. In good condition, with good bore, a shotgun that has been taken care of, but used gently or extensively, no matter what it looks like, if it's mechanically in good shape, you can take it out into the blind and hunt with it with modern steel loads and not have a problem. With an asterisk next to that, a little caveat: depending upon your choke size, to help reduce pressures and stresses on your barrel, make sure that if it's a full, I would recommend not going larger than number 2 or 1 shot. If it's modified or improved cylinder, going up to BB is reasonable. Another thing to consider: if your gun's a 2 3/4 inch chamber, 1 1/8 loads that are super fast are available, but I would not go heavier than 1 1/8, and I'd stay between 1 1/16 and 1 1/8 at around 1400 feet per second. If you have a Magnum, whether it's an A5 Magnum, a Remington 1100 Magnum, etc., if it has a full choke or not, I would recommend not going with a load that pushes the shot charge faster than 1500 feet per second and not greater charge weight than 1 1/4 ounce. You can get really fast 1 1/8, but generally you want to keep the pressures a little bit lower, and you want to make sure you're not stressing the barrel too much. Now, steel is steel. People will say, well, you shouldn't put steel through older guns, and that's generally true. But if you have a good condition gun that is checked out by a gunsmith, or you are competent enough to make good choices about your firearm, you should be okay. Understand, however, you do take the risk of damaging your firearm with non-toxic shot loads. And absolutely do not run tungsten through older barrels. Tungsten is a much harder material than steel, although the alloy that is used in tungsten-based shots is denser and is not as refined as barrel steel. it still could have the potential to damage a barrel, and I would not risk it. That said, bismuth loads, if you're willing to cough up the extra coin, are an excellent option to be able to run these guns reliably, safely, and very deadly on birds. Bismuth does not have that much higher density than steel when you consider other shot loads, but it is an exceptional choice for old duck guns to give them similar performance to what they once had with 1 1/8 and 1 1/4 lead duck loads back in the day. All of that yammering taken care of, I'm going to go back to my cheat sheet here, and we're going to talk about a few things that I thought would be critical to mention. So, classic handling, classic design, pointability, shootability, everything. When you're looking at older guns, especially when it's an A5, you can't beat it. It's absolutely a wonderful gun. It is heavier. It is a little bit more chunky in the blind, not as sleek and refined as today's modern waterfowling pieces, but it is still an absolute game getter, no matter what quarry you chase. If you're buying an A5 or a variant, such as a Savage, a Remington Model 11, etc., whether the A5 is Belgian or Japanese manufacture, there's a lot of things to consider, but primarily you need to check for not just exterior finish. I've seen a lot of A5s and a lot of copies that are just in the white. They are just completely rubbed clean of all bluing except for where wood or other parts cover each other and where was not really capable of getting in. That's simply from people handling, from being wiped down constantly, maybe it rusting a little bit and it being wiped off. This gun, you can see a little bit of white coming through on the back of the barrel, where a previous owner had carried it like this for years, around the edges, etc. I mean, this gun's probably 85 to 92% original condition. But when you're looking for hunting pieces, the outside appearance is not necessarily indicative of the quality of the firearm. If it's just worn down and in the white, wood stock of the finish where the hand is placed on the grip and on the forearm is worn off, that's just honest use. And you can expect some fatigue on the internal components because it might have been shot quite a bit. But if you're taking a look at things like the rib, if it has one, the bead, is the bead smashed? Are there dings, dents, huge crushes in the rib? Does it look like somebody has messed with the screws, particularly on A5? This one has a little bit of it. One of the screws has a little nick for me because I incorrectly chose the wrong screw size, so bad on me. But if you see a lot of marring and incorrect, what looks like somebody used a very incorrect bit on these screws to take the gun apart, that's a big warning sign that that gun may have been messed with, or somebody may have gotten into its guts that really had no business in there, had no clue what they were doing, didn't know how to take care of the gun. I have seen A5s where the screws are like that, and then you go to clean it out, prepare it for sale at the gun shop, or do it for a buddy or whatever, and the pinhole's all messed up. The pin that holds the bolt and the bolt handle slash swing piece, I'm not sure exactly the terminology of the part, what it's called, but that's all marred up, or that's bent and it's in really rough shape. Yeah, it'll work, but it eventually will fatigue and break, and then you've got more issues. Things like extractor claws, ejectors breaking or being worn down is normal. Those are simple to replace parts. They're readily available. I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Other than to, if you're negotiating a price, take the value of that component out of the gun if it's damaged when you're buying it. But generally, these guns are bomb-proof. But if it looks like somebody's been getting into them, or they're just absolutely wrecked, don't touch them with a 10-foot pole, unless you're just looking for a parts gun or a project gun, or you're gonna do something funky with it and fun, just, you know, your second type of cool kind of thing. But really, my big recommendation is look for a good quality piece that is in mechanically good shape and the springs are strong. When you grab the bolt handle, it shouldn't be super difficult to charge it, but it should have some resistance. If it feels like it's binding, it could be dirt, but most likely it's been taken apart and it's been incorrectly put back together. When you grab the barrel with the bolt closed, it should have stiff resistance to move. That is a big thing. If it's way too hard, there's probably something wrong with the friction ring, or something's going on up front that shouldn't be going wrong. If it's really, really loose, that gun needs new springs. And you need to check the back of the bolt face, because if it's been run with worn out springs too much, it's going to beat itself to death. Very important. Another thing to check for is take off the barrel and handguard. Look at your spring set. Look at your friction ring. Look at your brass friction piece. Those are going to be indicative of the amount of wear the gun has seen. If they're original components, if they're replaced components, they look really new but the gun is worn, well, that shows you that somebody took the time to update it. But again, check the back of that bolt to make sure it hasn't been beat up. If it's been beat up, the gun's been run too soft or with the incorrect friction ring set up and too heavy of loads, and it's beaten itself to death. And it's really something you want to either get for a really low price or stay clear away from, because it's not going to serve you well and it's just not going to be worth having in your collection. That being said, most of these guns, like I said, are pretty bomb-proof, but most of them have never been cleaned. And when I say never been cleaned, I actually literally mean never been cleaned. The barrels have been taken off, the tubes have been wiped down, the bores have been pulled through with a rag or been brushed out, etc. Everything that a normal person can access, maybe the bolt face has been wiped down, the gun has been oiled, that's it. The stock has never been off the gun. The action, the trigger group, nothing has been taken apart in this gun since it was put together at the factory. And that's most of the guns that you'll find. Very few, unless they're in the hands of a collector who knows what he's doing, so it's been through a gunsmith, etc., will not be taken apart. That said, it's not a detriment to the gun, because the gun can run that filthy, that dirty. But when you get it home, make sure you find out, you learn about, you educate yourself on how to properly maintain these, how to take them apart. And the first thing I'd recommend doing is get yourself a proper screw set. Brownell sells Browning A5 screwdriver sets that are perfectly fitted to these tiny thin slots. That will help you out a lot. Take it home, take it completely apart, completely clean it, put it back together. You'll notice that it'll be completely different gun. It'll just be super smooth. It'll also give you a chance to take a look at components and go, hey, does this need replacement? Does this need repair, etc. The most common points, again, that are going to need repair are going to be your action spring, your friction spring, your rings, and your extractors and or ejectors. Those components, some guys will just, when they buy a new Browning, they'll just swap them out. Whether they look good or not, they'll put a new one in just to make sure it runs. Not entirely necessary, but I check them over, and they're not too expensive to buy and keep on hand. Action springs don't usually wear out too much, but if you do have one worn out, it's about a $10 part. Extractors, ejectors are about $15 to $20 each, and you can get brand new in the package Browning OEM parts that will not fail you for years and years to come. That was what happened with this gun, and it's perfectly ready to hit the field this fall. Now, don't be afraid, once again, to use modern ammunition in this with the restrictions I said. If it's a 3-inch gun, stay under 1,500 foot per second. If it's got a full choke, stay below, generally number 2 shot. This gun loves 3s. This gun is going to be absolutely devastating with heavy steel 1.25 ounce 3s. I've patterned it, and it's going to just destroy birds if they come too close. 10 yards is the closest shot you want to take. You want to make sure you're going to swat them in the head. Generally, my father's going to have to stand back just a touch more to kill birds efficiently and not tear them up too much with this gun, which is awesome. Unfortunately, it's a fixed choke, but the nice thing about these barrels is that they're so thick that if you decide you want to get a secondary barrel, or you want to take the original gun and send it off to a gunsmith to have it ported out to a Browning Invector or Invector Plus choke tube set, you can do that. There is enough meat on these barrels that you can have that done, and it's reasonably affordable, between $100 and $150, depending upon where you are in your gunsmith. Outside of that, and that'll give you more flexibility, of course, but outside of that, really don't be too afraid to run these. Fire a couple rounds of appropriate shot sizes, see what pattern's the best, see what it likes to work with, play with your friction rings. Always start with 3-inch magnums. If it runs on that, keep it there. If it doesn't, start reducing to 2 3/4 inch Magnum, and it should run there. And that's specifically with the A5 Magnum. There's special setups for the rings, etc., which is another critical part. Make sure that when you set up your gun, you're running it with the proper ring setup. But I digress. Again, the choke tubes, most Magnums are going to be in a 28, 30, or 32-inch extra, or not extra full, excuse me, full, but it sometimes can seem like an extra full about how well it patterns compared to modern interchangeable choke tubes at times, at least factory ones. Just be mindful of that. Again, control your shot size. You should be okay with modern steel ammunition. The wads really protect the barrels well, and you shouldn't have problems. If you're hesitant, just buy bismuth. I can tell you that I've run out of full choke and out of modified choke with my Model 12 16 gauge, with my Remington Model 11, with my 1897, and these guns are older than this one. They don't have the same quality of steel, the same high quality of steel. I've run steel shot of appropriate velocities and shot size out of them safely, with no marring to the barrel, with no safety issues. Am I going to do it a lot? No. But if I need to take it out to the blind and I don't want to break the bank on 10 rounds of bismuth, that steel shot will get it done. Setting up for shells. So, I can demonstrate this some other time, but today we're just going to go over it. For 3-inch Magnums, you're going to have all your rings and all your springs in place for the A5 Magnum. For 2 3/4-inch Magnums, basically if you run 1 1/4 at 3 dram or better, it's going to be considered a 2 3/4-inch field Magnum, and you're going to run 1 set of friction rings, so that will be just the barrel, a brass piece, a steel piece, and then both springs. And then if you want to run dove loads in a 3-inch Magnum, and this is not what was offered out of the factory, but you can safely do it. You basically want to replicate what a standard 2 3/4-inch A5 does. You leave the barrel, 1 brass friction piece, 1 steel friction piece, and 1 spring. If you have the dual nested round springs, this will be easy. However, if you have a single heavy flat wire spring, you will need to buy a more modernized dual spring setup, so you can simply insert one, and I'd recommend doing that anyways. Give your gun a fresh set of springs. The whole kit to replace all the friction pieces and the springs from Midwest Gun Works is only about $60 or $70, so it's well worth the cost to make sure your gun runs well. Outside of that, that's a lot of babbling to go over exactly why you may want to use an A5 Magnum. We'll do some videos in the future. Hopefully this fall we'll get a couple of hunts with this baby up in New York with my father, and he'll be able to take her out and give her a good run through, and maybe take a couple mallards, a couple woodies, maybe a goose or two. But until that time, we will take her out a few more times, get some video of her shooting, show you the different friction ring setups, etc. Until next time, guys, I'm Drake for American Arms Channel. Have a great one. God bless. Keep your powder dry.